Let's go. You're listening to KZSU, Stanford University's FM radio station, broadcasting across the Yay area on 90.1 and across the world at kzsu.org.
Welcome to Brands, Beats, and Bytes, hosted by Daryl D.C. Cobbin and Larry Taman. Brands, Beats, and Bytes stands at the intersection of brand, tech, and culture. We bring you interesting people and insightful points of view on what's popping and not popping in marketing, tech, culture, and beyond. DC and Larry are fascinated with the stories and people behind some of the best marketing in the business. No matter how dope your product, if your marketing sucks, your company may suck too. They both serve as managing partners at Marketing Consultancy Brand Positioning Doctors, where they help companies, large and small, tech and non-tech, build better marketers so they can build better, great brands.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for joining us for another edition of Brand Beats and Bytes. And I gotta say, LT, I'm like incredibly excited today.
Yeah, we're super excited to have a very special guest in the building today. So we've got a super cool mix of Brands, Beats, and Bytes. And actually a lot of bites today, D.
We do. I'm feeling ebullient, actually. Ebullient.
With our very special guest, Charlene Li. So let me give you a nice intro for Charlene's amazing background. So after earning 2 degrees at Harvard, undergrad and MBA, in 1993, and I want to space this out so the audience understands the chops here, okay?
Let's hear it.
So Charlene clearly saw the internet revolution coming, and at the outset of that, she went to work for the San Jose Merck's Mercury Center, which was their foray into the online world and one of the first newspapers to do so. So soon after that, she then created the Internet Publishing Division of Community Newspaper Company. Okay? So she was there at the advent of when the Internet was just burgeoning and becoming. She then moved on to Forrester Research, where she became a well-known and respected worldwide expert on how marketers and media companies use technology to grow their business and see the future. As she grew her presence and, yes, her brand, that's what we're here talking about, right?
Indeed.
She then founded her own company, Altimeter Group, where she continues to help companies thrive with a disruption mindset. And D, basically when Charlene speaks, right, Silicon Valley and companies worldwide listen. All right?
Okay.
So almost done here. So a big part of this is she is a New York Times bestselling author of 6 books, including her newest release, The Disruption Mindset, Why Some Businesses Transform While Others Fail. And she's had open leadership as well as co-authoring the critically acclaimed book, Groundswell, with Josh Bernoff. Charlene also serves on the regional board for YPO, which is a global network of CEOs, and a sought-after public speaker, appearing at events ranging from TED, the World Business Forum, to South by Southwest. She's also appeared on 60 Minutes, PBS NewsHour, and is frequently quoted by the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, USA Today, and the AP. So Charlene was also named one of the top 50 leadership innovators by Inc. and one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company. And she is on our wonderful little show here today. Charlene Li, welcome to Brands, Beats, and Bytes.
Welcome, Charlene.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Now, with a background like that, Larry, I sort of feel like what we really should do is just say, Charlene, just talk. We don't ask you to just talk. Just enlighten
just do you, right?
Just enlighten the audience for us.
We got to do some lifting here, though, D.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a little bit. Let's do a little bit. All right, so Charlene, on the heels of that introduction and the books, I want to go to authorship. So we were looking up some stats, and Jeffrey Epstein did an article where he did a survey and found that 81% of Americans believe they have a book in them to write. That's 200 million folk. 81%.
Wow.
All right. Yet, as professional writers, the percentage of the population, you want to guess that, Larry? Like Charlene probably knows it.
It's got to be less than 1%.
So it's 2%, 2.2.
Really?
Yeah, 2%. Okay. Now, that's just writers. That's not authors.
Got it.
So we got to imagine that authors is going to be lower than that.
Right.
Than that. Okay, so here's where we're going, Charlene. What has it taken for you to get 6 books out of that mind of yours?
A lot of tears on my desk. It's not easy writing a book. It's really hard. But I think the thing that keeps me motivated is that I'm trying to tell a story, and solve some questions, and I'm deeply curious. And I hear from people, like, this is the problem we have. How do we solve it? And sometimes they're just such big problems. It's more than a post or an article or report. It takes a book to bring it to life. Lots of blood, sweat, and tears go into each of them.
We can feel you.
Yeah,
we can feel that coming from you.
So, Charlene, when you land upon a subject, to your point, that you think can't be contained in an article or a blog post, how do you know you've got one that is worthy of a book?
Great question.
Well, it's a great question. And I've written some books that are very short, like 3 or 4 chapters.
Okay.
Some of them are 10 chapters, like monstrosity things. This one is 6 chapters. So define book, right? It just has to hold together through some number of pages. But there's usually a theme. There's some sort of framework. This is business books. There's a framework. There's a problem that you're going to tackle. And some of them are really big problems. Like when we try to understand social media, we said, that's a pretty big book.
Yeah.
You need a lot of stories in there.
Yeah.
I tackled, my last book was about leadership in the digital age. I'm like, this is 4 chapters. That's 100 pages. And frankly, the executives I was writing for wouldn't read more than 100 pages.
Right.
Yeah. Probably pages. Right. Yeah.
You know, so I'm thinking about the problem, but I think about it as, in particular for books, can a story help make the point? Just going into greater detail, not just the stories, but also how do you go about thinking about it? So one of my hallmarks of my books is that I really like to give pragmatic advice. Some things that you can do, not just a couple bullets at the end of the chapter, but a good chunk of the chapter, a quarter to a third of the chapter is talking about, like, okay, now that you understand the problem, this is what you can do about it.
Ah, nice.
Which follows the script that you really had from Forrester, am I right, Charlene, originally? Because that's what you were doing, and taking it to another level, though.
Well, yeah, in particular, when I started Altimeter, we were very, very focused on using design thinking to create our research, meaning we were going to identify what the problem was and then dig deeper and then deeper and deeper, because the problem on the surface probably isn't the real problem.
Yeah, interesting.
And doing research to figure out what the real problem is that's the key, because then you can get down to the nub. Like, this is really the problem. And one of the results of that is when you have that kind of level of detail on what the problem is, you can't help yourself but say, okay, how do you actually solve that?
Right.
I'm enough of a doer, enough of an entrepreneur that says, I can't leave that problem unsolved. Like, how would you actually do something about it?
That's very interesting.
That is.
Very interesting, Charlene. One more question on this. Lots of people who have written books sometimes will talk about their approach to how they actually got it from their brains and hearts and souls onto a page or tablets. Our show, when we're at our best, at least we hope, is our listeners learn something that they can then apply. You mentioned being pragmatic in your books. We hope that our show in some way provides some pragmatism to those that are listening. So for those that are listening right now, and they're in that 81%, Charlene, wanting to have a book written, but they don't know how to approach writing a book, you would say to them what?
Tell everybody that you're writing a book.
And then, nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah. You say, I'm working on a book. Oh, what's the book about? And then you have to actually practice saying what the book is about.
Wow.
The worst thing you could do is to go hide in a room someplace, bang out an entire book, and then give it to somebody like, so what do you think? I thought I had a book because I was talking about it with people. I was giving speeches. I was doing consulting around it. I was writing lots of other things. I was circling around it. And I kind of centered down on a couple of themes that I was saying speeches. Well, I did a speech for about a year. And I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go write the book. And I sat down and I'm like, oh, I got nothing here.
I got squadouche.
Yeah, I mean, I had a high-level idea, but the detail that goes, the discipline of writing a book really makes you dig deep. I'm like, what do I got? I got nothing. So, yeah.
That's awesome, Charlene. Thanks for sharing that. And before I get to the next section, I just have one quick follow-up for that, is that it also seems to me what you're saying is you're also putting yourself on the line. If you tell people I'm writing a book, so the next time you have drinks with your friends, so how's the book coming? You got to have an answer.
Yeah, I have to say, I was kind of dawdling around my book. I would just do work on it and then take a month off. And you mentioned in the intro that I'm in YPO, and my forum would just look at me like, yeah, you're working on the book. Where's the book?
Yeah, what's up?
I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to really show up now. I can't show up at our next meeting without something to show them.
Yeah, that's great. That's
I like that.
Yeah, that's. Thanks for sharing that, Charlene. So, okay, we're going to move on to the first real section of our show, and that's what we call On the Clock. So, as you probably know, Charlene, the tenure of CMOs is not very long. And for high-growth companies, a lot of which you deal with, the average tenure is 18 months.
And dropping.
Yes. Okay. So, Charlene, with your amazing credentials on really being at the forefront of tech and marketing, and your constant interactions with many CMOs and also the C-suite, D. So a lot of times, Charlene, you're really consulting at the top of the org chart. You're a great person to enlist an answer here. What's your thoughts about this?
In terms of what's going on with the
CMO tenure and why it's so short.
I've heard some contradictory data lately that it's actually getting a little bit longer now. They're actually getting some traction.
Wow, that's good news.
Yeah, that is good news.
Yeah, which is good news, isn't it? And part of it is, first of all, it was really short because it was sort of like the marketing flavor of the day. Okay, we're going to go do digital. Now we're going to do social. And now we're going to do data. And the CMOs, frankly, weren't catching up with all of the changes that were happening. And so they were cycling through them because the strategy kept changing about what we were going to do. So let's go get another CMO who is an expert in it. And I think two things happened. I think companies, first of all, stabilized in terms of thinking about how they were going to digitize marketing. They went through all that pain. They now are doing digital to some extent or another.
Right.
So
well, they have to.
Okay, now we know what we're doing with digital. We actually know what we're doing. And then the second part is the CMOs have all gotten a lot better. They actually are good at doing all of these things and thinking much more holistically. We used to talk about traditional CMOs and next generation CMOs. And what I see now is if you're going to be a CMO of a company, you're going to absolutely define yourself as a next generation. Because you have to do it. So much of consideration now is through digital and other technology channels. You have to use data. You have to be able to ask the right questions around that. Otherwise, you don't get to be CMO. So I think that's a lot of the skills that we kind of take for granted as a CMO, frankly, weren't in the suite of skills of CMOs 5-10 years ago, which is why we saw so much spinning around. But now we're seeing a new generation of CMOs coming in, and they've earned their stripes, having spent 18 months someplace else and not going to make the same mistake again.
Wow.
So they have some staying power now.
So I have a quick follow-up. That's very interesting, okay? And I could see, and Charlene's right on the forefront of really being on this. So what I think I'm hearing, and let me make sure I'm playing this back right, Charlene, is that maybe a few years ago, you had more CMOs who were more right brain, and what really has happened in the marketplace, you have to be, and that's what we've heard from a lot of different folks on the show, is that you really need to be 50-50 left-right brain, and that's balanced out a little bit. Am I surmising that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, the traditional CMO in the past was the person who came up with advertising and worked with the ad agency, right? And they were all in charge of brand, all brand. I have companies now where the CMO is like, I got somebody over there, a VP, taking care of brand. You know?
Okay.
But the place where we're going to really push the business, and these are more CMOs now, not as brand stewards, but as the people who are put in charge. They're tasked with developing a relationship with customers. And the way you develop a customer is now isn't just from putting up beautiful ads. But some companies are doing that, but that's only a small piece. There are some companies now where I talk to them, and they're like, yeah, we probably should do something around brand because we haven't thought about it in a couple of years. And the CMO is just out there just driving the business. So it's a very different time now in that the C-suite is looking to the CMO like, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
it can't just be an ad. Like, how are you helping drive the business? How are you driving the bottom line?
Right. Great stuff, Dee. Right?
Yes.
Great stuff. Okay, Charlotte, can you take us to our first PSA, please?
We want to tell you about Canines for Warriors. Now, that would be in the fight, canines in the fight against the PTSD. There's a remedy that you won't find in a bottle. It's a prescription on 4 legs, a Canine for Warrior service dog. Canines for Warriors is the nation's largest provider of service dogs for veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Veterans who graduated from our program return to their families, communities, and to themselves with renewed hope for life. Our unique nonprofit also saves the dogs who become the Warriors' new battle buddies. 90% of our service dogs are rescues. At Canines for Warriors, we rescue dogs, and the dogs rescue the warriors. Learn more and donate today for caninesforwarriors.org. That's K, the number 9, the letters S, for warriors.org. Again, www.k9s4warriors.org. And I'm a dog lover, and I say we.
Yes.
Thank you, Charlotte. Larry, again, we just have great organizations we have these reads. Charlotte does a good job. This is one that's near and dear to us. Pete, who is the CEO of the CMO Club. He has a CMO Club Summit annually. We were fortunate enough to be invited to do a live record of our show, and this was one of the events and one of the organizations that was supported there. So it was great.
Yeah, Charlene, this organization, what a great organization. We really got to know. So we told them we got to get some verbiage for our show so we can read you. So that's near and dear to our hearts.
All right, Charlene, we are going next to a segment of the program that's called 5 Questions. Here's how this is going to go down. I'm going to ask you a question. Larry's going to ask you a question. We're going to go back and forth until we get to 5. And I started off. All right, Charlene. Give us an experience you have had with a brand where when you had it, it just blew your mind. You just could not believe how enthralled you were with interacting with this brand. A bit like your first love. What was this for you?
When was I just awed by an experience with a brand? I would have to say that I think the first couple of times I was using Airbnb it was just like, yeah, I'm going to go stay at a person's house, right? And like, what's that going to be like?
Right.
And I think that the interface, the site just makes you feel comfortable. You're looking through all the options, reading through the reviews, and then the actual experience of engaging with the Airbnb host was amazing. I was like, why would I ever stay in a hotel again? And the experiences, and I just did an experience when I was in Sao Paulo. So it's one of those things that I kind of take for granted, but every time I use it, I'm like, wow, this is so nice. This is
very cool.
A beautiful, warm feeling that comes over me, and I love using it. I have to say the other one that's just kind of funny is Uber. Yeah, people love to hate them, but they just make it so easy. Again, I live in the middle of San Francisco. I literally call an Uber, and it's in front of my house within a minute. Yep. Yeah. Just partly because of where I live. And it never gets old. I'm like, how does this happen? It just, somebody just magically appears and drives me someplace. And I have no idea who this person is.
Yes.
But again, what's amazing about that kind of facility of things is great. And I'll give you one that just happened. It kind of freaked me out, and then I thought about it. It was actually pretty cool.
Okay.
Coming through U.S. Customs, it's kind of a pain, right? And so I do everything possible to get through customs and security as quickly as possible. So I'm getting off an overnight flight, have to go through security, through immigration. I do have global entry, so it's a little bit faster. I don't have to go through the normal routes. Yep. And they go, we changed the system now. You don't have to put in your 4 fingers. You don't have to put in your passport. Just look at the camera. I'm like, okay, looking at the camera. Takes a picture of me, does facial recognition, identifies me, identifies flight, and you're free to go. So my first reaction was I was freaked out.
Right.
Okay.
It's like, wow. And then I thought about it. It's like, how many global entry people are coming through this time of day because they know all the passenger manifests.
Right.
It's not that hard.
Right.
So I kind of didn't get freaked out anymore. And I'm like, that was awesome.
Right.
That was That was a great experience.
Yeah.
Well, they already, to your point, you thought about it one step in, right? And in another situation, it would be creepy. But here, they already know you. They already know all the key points they need to know vis-a-vis your passport number and everything else. So that experience is really interesting, even your mindset of thinking about it that way.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about you do need a little bit of data to understand that this space is actually, and I have my hair up, my glasses on, and they still recognize me.
Yeah.
The universe of people, they have my passport photos, and I've probably been through customs enough that they have a whole entire record of every time I've been
probably.
Customs. So not that hard. Kind of freaky, but man, I was so appreciative that it took me maybe 15 seconds to go through customs.
Right.
It's interesting, Charlene, of the three examples that you've given, Airbnb, Uber, and then U.S. Customs through global entry, what appears to be consistent for you is that there's a before-after experience. And let me explain. For Airbnb, you said before you did it, you thought, what's this going to be like being in someone else's home? For Uber, you said, wow, someone I don't even know is going to show up at my place and take me somewhere. And then for customs and global entry, you said, wow, I've got on glasses. I've got my hair, in whatever form it's in. I don't have hair, by the way, so I'm already jealous. And they still know me. And so it appears as if what I'm hearing you say is that if there is something that either exceeded your experience expectations or surprised you, that has left some impact on you regarding the brand.
Yes. And again, we talk about surprise and delight as one of the best brand experiences that you can have. But I would say something even more important, which is relevance. And it's something that the parent company who acquired Altimeter is very keen on, in that brands are fantastic when they're relevant to you. And so it can be actually Airbnb, even though I've been using them for years, or even a host, it doesn't have that kind of before and after, but it's still highly relevant, and it works really well for me, and it's always there. It's reliable. So it's not an exciting brand anymore, but wow, I just so appreciate it. And I have such strong brand affinity and loyalty to Airbnb. Same thing with Uber, through thick and thin, right? They just do well by me. They just do well by me. I have lived right next to it. So, in competitive situations, I will look at both of them and see who's less expensive. I will do that. But man, I really appreciate just how much of here's the idea of how relevant it is. How upset would you be if the brand went away? Like, that's the relevance in my life.
That's a research question that people ask, and it really synopsizes it in a great way. We're going to move to the next question, but it's funny, the three of us are big users of Airbnb and Uber, especially when we go on client missives where the three of us are staying together, so we're right with you on that. Okay, next question. So, Charlene, who has had or is having the most influence on your career?
That's a great question. Who is having the most influence on my career right now? It's interesting because when I think about what my career is right now, I'm kind of like doing this portfolio life of things. You are working at Altimeter, speaking, I'm being on boards, other things. I would say that the group that has the most influence on my career is my YPO Forum. I mentioned that before, but it's a group that it's 8 of us. We meet every month and for 4 hours, so it's a pretty big commitment. And they know me really well. And there was sort of like my personal advisory board, and are able to tell me, and they've seen me over, at this point, we're beginning our 3rd year together, but they've seen me over time develop and how I'm thinking about things and how I'm thinking about the next 20 years. So I feel like they really understand and see my trajectory and hold me accountable, maybe do things like write a book. But also, this is a time of change for me. I'm, going through all these different changes, exploring lots of new options, starting new adventures. My kids are grown in college. Who knows where they're going to be when they finish college? So that's up in the air. My husband and I are experiencing what being free birds are. We don't talk about being empty nesters. It's about being free birds.
Free birds.
It's all about the branding.
It is about the branding. I like that.
So, yeah, and just having other people going through the same things. They're all CEOs, too. So they understand what it's like to be there in the pull of running things or not running things, running away from that. So it's super helpful. It's not so much mentors as having peers who have stood in the same shoes that I have, and it's invaluable to have them around.
Excellent, excellent. All right, next question. So your books are chock full of quotes, and this quote will no doubt sound familiar to you. Experience is what you get when you don't get what you want.
Yeah.
So that's one of your quotes. That leads into this question. You've had a number of accomplishments, but you've also no doubt have had some things that have gone not the way you wanted them to go. In other
Sideways.
words, pear-shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah, slightly off the rails. All right. Give us your biggest F-up and what you learned from it.
Okay, I'll give you one. And that was when I was running Altimeter, and it was a crucial time. We were growing like crazy. We just hired all these people. Mm-hmm. And we were spending a lot of money. And I thought the cash was coming in. So I took my eye off the ball. I was focused on writing my book at the time, finishing up the book. And so I assumed everything was happening. And then I turned around and it was like, no cash.
Ooh.
Where did it all go?
Payroll.
It didn't come in. We thought it was coming in. Yeah. So had to do a pivot, had to do layoffs. Not a fun thing.
Oh.
And it's horrible. I've had to do layoffs of other people, when I was working at other companies. But to do one in your own company, your own baby, and realize that it's your own fault, it's like the most brutal thing you have to do.
Ooh. So what do you take from that, Charlene? What would you do differently?
Oh, cash is king.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters. I thought everything was fine, and I should have been checking it. If the book stops with me, I should have been checking. I should have been paying better attention and not just disappearing. And so that was really important. So I watch cash like a hawk, doing tons of cash flows, really trying to figure that out, working with my finance team and making sure that everything is good there. And just really, being aggressive and taking those risks, but knowing what the limits of those risks are and understanding just, keeping my finger on the pulse of the business can never be, that finger can never be taken off. Never look away.
Okay, now I like this. We're getting somewhere now.
Yeah, but that's a good one.
I just going to go a little bit deeper here. So I'm going to put myself, Charlene, in the shoes of one of your employees at this company where you took your eye off the ball. And I'm going to imagine some of them were thinking, hold on, wait a minute. You hired me. You sold me your dream. I bought the dream. I'm in here working my keister off to make this dream come true. Your dream and now my embraced dream. I've adopted this dream. Now, it's now Thursday and Friday when some major stuff is due, and Charlene is off either writing a book or on a book tour. All good, because I'm getting paid. Now you're telling me I got to be out, and you're telling me I've got to get out because you don't have the money to pay me. I may be thinking, Charlene, if she hadn't been out doing her personal thing, becoming an author on TED Talk or whatever, maybe we'd have some money. Did anybody say anything like that to you?
No, they didn't. But I made it very clear that I blew it. I made it very clear that I blew it.
Okay.
That this was my responsibility and that I was doing something, again, that would help the business. It was just like if you're writing a book, writing a report, but I should have been looking at it. And one of the hardest things for me being an Altimeter is I was doing two jobs.
Right.
I was running the company and I was being the analyst.
Right.
And that is just really, really hard because you don't do either job really well.
They're both 24/7. It's really right.
And so when I sold the company, I was very clear, I don't want to run it anymore. I just want to go do what I originally set out to do, which was to be the thought leader, be the writer, be the thinker. And I'm good enough at running things that I keep running them, but it's not the thing that really gets me up in the morning.
And that's not your superpower. Your superpower is the thought leader.
It's something different.
Yeah,
it's something different. Right? Yeah. But I can do it well enough that I think I should be doing it, and people want me to be doing it.
Gotcha.
So I'm starting this new thing, and I'm keeping it really low, lean, and setting expectations pretty low and making sure there's an amazing team in place that can actually execute.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So
does.
It doesn't have to fall in, but the only thing that I'm really watching is the cash.
Cash is king. Okay, so Charlene, next question. This is right in, man, no one better to ask this question, Dee, than Charlene. Mm-hmm. Okay, so technology and marketing. So looking into the future, your crystal ball, what do you see as areas marketers can really leverage tech versus areas they should be leery?
Ooh, leverage and leery. One of the hidden secrets, I think, in companies, in business, is not outside the company, it's inside.
Do tell.
And I think that your employees, we always talk about employees being our number one asset, but we barely tap into their expertise and knowledge. Mm-hmm. There's so much data, so much information that we could be pulling from them and connecting them with customers more directly. Instead, we make them kind of work in the dark. They don't know what customers are doing. I was talking to an engineer today. He said, I'm really frustrated because my company was trying to get me to create product for a customer who didn't exist. He was now hearing you talk. He goes, they were doing the right thing. They were trying to create a product for a future customer. They were like pretty smart upstairs. Mm-hmm. And I go, no, they weren't. They were being really stupid because they weren't telling you who that future customer was.
Right. Right. You're supposed to guess.
Yeah, like how are you supposed to create something for somebody who doesn't, at least tell me why you think this is good so I can build a better product. So I think we still have a long way to go as organizations, as ecosystems inside of companies to be better at communicating, understanding, sharing, analyzing the data that we throw off, understanding the knowledge that is in people's heads, and being able to take, fully include employees in having them really, truly participate with all of themselves, being all in into achieving their objectives.
So is there a process to that, to tap into employees to leverage tech versus leery? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, again, so much work is digital. Again, you can have people actually doing digital work. So they're on call centers, they're working with machinery that are smart machines, so you can actually see if you're saying do work in a different way, does it actually work in a different way within minutes in many cases. Well, we don't take advantage of that. We have employees who talk to customers every day. What are those customers saying? Do we capture it? Do we know what they're saying? Does that knowledge get moved up into the organization? When they see a new opportunity to serve a customer in a new and different way, do they think of that as a cranky, obnoxious, annoying customer?
I got you.
Or do they say, like, wow, here's an opportunity for us to serve a need that is unmet in the marketplace?
Or for the whole organization to learn is really what you're saying. So it stays with that one employee because either they're rolling their eyes or they're looking at it as just a problem trying to solve when actually they should be throwing up the red flag to say, hey, here's a data point we all need to be aware of.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And exactly. And that's why I'm so focused on disruptive organizations that are really good.
Got it.
Have a clear idea of who the future customer is, but they also make sure that idea of who that future customer is, everybody in the organization knows about it. Because if somebody happens to see one walking by, that you interact with them, they should be throwing up again that red flag and say, everybody come and look, it's a future customer. Watch, let's go observe them in the wild,
Right.
And so this is where I think artificial intelligence can be extremely helpful. If it can help us speed information across the organization so that the right information gets to the right person at the right time in the organization to act on it, imagine how much we could do. How much more unified we could be in achieving our goals. So marketers are constantly looking outside, but I think in many ways, one of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit you can do is to connect your employees so that their voices are heard, their opinions, because they're the ones who interact with customers every single day.
Connected 360.
No doubt. Yeah. All right, last question here of the 5. Charlene, what are you most proud of?
Does it have to be work-related?
Wherever you want to take it.
Because I am so proud of my kids, as any parent would be. So there's that. There's just a full stop. I'm just so proud of them.
So names, we do this on the show. Names, tell us more.
Yeah, sure. my son Ben is a junior at Boston University studying computer science, and our daughter Kat is at the Berklee College of Music in Boston studying music production.
You guys are on the plane to Boston.
Yeah, I like to see them. I go stop, and it's very convenient that they're both in the same city.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of them, not so much for their achievements, but for just, toughing it out, sticking it out, becoming an adult in this crazy age.
Sure.
And we always had a saying in our household, I go, I want you to be happy, and I want you to be a contributing member of society. That's all I want. Mm-hmm. And they're really taking that to heart. They're really working on being balanced and happy, having friends, and accomplishing things that they think are important. But they're also saying, like, how am I going to make a difference? How am I going to contribute? And it's thinking through that and it influencing their decisions every day. I'm very proud of that.
You should be.
Yeah. And I think from a work perspective, I'm very proud of when my work has an impact on people. I've been around enough now. My books have been out there that people come up to me like, your book changed my life.
Oh, wow.
I do this now instead of that. And you go, you just kind of I get blown away by that.
Right. And they tell you how, right? They tell you, like, can you give us do you remember one specifically where, something recently?
Yeah, I was at MarTech conference in Boston, Scott Brinker's conference. It was great. And I knew it was kind of coming home to the church because these are all people who started in marketing, really into social and stuff. So we've been, I've been part of that community for 20 years, basically. And some people came up, and they were two founders of an agency, Niram agency in India. Mm-hmm. And they said, because of Groundswell, we started our social and digital agency. It's now the largest digital agency in India.
Oh, wow.
And I went, whoa.
Wow.
Like, wow. But it's the books, it's the things that I've done. Just to have that moment, or even after when I do my talks or my workshops and stuff, people will come up and like, oh, I really enjoyed that. And just to help them remember what it is, I was like, thank you so much. What was your takeaway? And they pause and they think, and it goes, this is my takeaway. And to just know that your work has made an impact on someone is probably the most amazing gift that you can give yourself and that other people can give you. And
give the world. Give the world.
Yeah, and one of the things I do at the end of my speech is I always put up my contact information. People think I'm crazy. Like, no, here's my email. Mm-hmm. Here's my social handle. Mm-hmm. Please stay in touch. Mm-hmm. And I always say the same thing. I put up my contact information at the end of every single one of my speeches, and hardly anybody gets in touch. So I hope you all will be different.
Wow. That's cool. That brings you to life. Okay, Charlotte, can you please take us to our next PSA?
Absolutely. We want to tell you about another You brand. So You Belong is an organization that helps mobilize individuals for volunteering and educational opportunities designed to advance international development efforts and promote cross-cultural understanding. Participants have the choice of various immersion placements or shorter expeditions to learn about cross-cultural values and international development issues. For more information, visit youbelong.org. That's UBELONG.org.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Again, just another great organization. We love the shout-outs for them. So, Charlene, we are in the next segment we call What's Poppin'? What's Poppin'?
What's Poppin'?
So we love to have fun here, Charlene. And what we do with What's Poppin' is we try and sort of interface with our guests about current things that are going on in marketing. We give shout-outs to campaigns that we really like that are resonating, and shout downs to those that don't. And then just to things that are going on. And you know what's going on right now, D?
What's up?
Something called the disruption mindset.
Oh, no. What is this?
Disruption mindset.
What is this?
So I have a book in my hand that I have read that is outstanding.
I'm looking at it.
Okay. The author happens to be our guest, Charlene Li.
What a coincidence.
How about that, right? And it's called The Disruption Mindset. So, Charlene, we want you to tell more. So can you give us some just more information for what the disruption mindset means for businesses large and small?
Sure. I wrote the book because I felt that we've been looking at disruption backwards. We keep looking for some technology or disruptive innovation that's going to drive growth. And the reality is growth is disruptive. And when we begin to really think about growing exponentially, like 50% compared to last year, 100%, 2x, 3x compared to the year before, we get freaked out. We're like, oh, that's going to be really hard. So we don't pursue it. And I just feel like so strongly that, we have so much potential for growth if only we would get out of our way, if only we could have that right mindset to be able to say, that growth, it's going to be hard. We're going to accept it, but we're going to prepare ourselves with the right mindset that we're not going to be crushed by it. In fact, we're going to thrive with it. So how do we actually create this change, go through this, and do really well with it, and not fail in the face of all this disruption that we're facing in our world?
Very interesting.
So the book was an attempt to say we have all these negative examples like Blockbuster and Kodak and Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Where are the positive examples?
Right.
And I discount, it's not to say they aren't really good, but any company, like especially the tech companies that have founders in them, I love Salesforce. I love what Mark Benioff is doing, but he's a founder. He can get away with doing things that nobody else can do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Your Mark Zuckerberg or your Larry Brent, you have a lot of permission to go do things to your own company. Most companies aren't like that.
Yep.
So for the rest of us, what does it look like? Like, how do you actually disrupt yourself?
So one of the things there's a lot of things. I have a lot of notes, and we don't have the time to go through, but one of the things that really, can you talk about stuck and flex cultures? I thought that was really interesting and one that really affects companies large and small and different sizes, and to me was in some way a tipping point to what you're talking about. Did I read that right?
Yes. So flux cultures, let me talk about stuck cultures first of all. Stuck cultures say things like, we've always done it this way. It got us here, so we're going to stay doing things that way. Versus a flux culture says, what got us here is not going to get us there, and there's probably a better way to do it anyway. Let's go find out what that is. And there are elements of these two cultures that every company has.
Yep.
And I find that flux cultures that can deal with change, embrace change because it represents opportunities, rather than stuck cultures that look at change as something to be avoided, something that is bad. These two sort of mindsets make a huge difference in terms of your cultures.
Yep.
So it's a lot easier to be disruptive and try new things when you have a flux mindset than you have a stuck mindset.
And Southwest was one of the examples that you used, which was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Southwest Airlines, many of us have flown them. They're a little funky, maverick, I don't know what you want to call them, but they're not like any other airline.
They are not.
And what's interesting, no, they're not. And they just do things in their Southwest way.
Yep.
And they have been profitable for 46 consecutive years.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That is amazing.
It is astonishing by any measure, but to do that in the airline industry, which is highly volatile.
Yep.
Crazy. And I was sitting there talking to the president, Tom Newen, and I asked him, what's been the secret to your longevity? I mean, you guys feel as fresh and as much of a maverick today, and you're like the leading airline in the United States. You're not like some little startup anymore. And he says, our strategy has always been to be a low-cost airline. And our culture, we invest just as heavily as our strategy. So they actually have a separate parallel organization that looks at culture. They invest heavily in it. And what I find with disruptive organizations, they know that culture is so important because it's the engine that drives the strategy. And if your culture is not strong, it's not robust and resilient, then it will not be able to withstand the many shifts in strategy that you have to have in this world to be ahead of disruption. So I think the key reason why Southwest is so amazing as a company is because of the culture.
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
That drives it.
I would totally agree. And one thing I will also say in our parlance, they are in the service business, and every touch point to their brand is with consumers, and they understand what their brand is at every touch point.
And what it's not.
That's correct. So I would add that that's our lens, Charlene. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. They like to say that we're a service company that happens to fly airplanes.
Yeah, there you go.
That's how they think about it.
All right, I'm going to go to my What's Poppin' now. You don't know this, Charlene, but some of our listeners who've tuned in, they do know this. I'm the father of 3 daughters. My eldest daughter, her name is Haley. She just graduated uni, Shout Howard University, Bytes and Stand Up. My middle daughter, her name is Lauren. She's at Savannah College of Art and Design. She's my creative soul and spirit. And my youngest daughter is Sydney. Sydney's at Clark Atlanta University. All of them are in film.
Near and dear to you.
Near and dear to both me and Jeff.
Yes.
Because I'm the father of 3 daughters, I'm super concerned and interested in what happens with women in business and women in any professional craft. So you're an author. So I looked up and you're a New York Times best-selling author. I looked up percentage of best-selling authors who are women through the decades. And I got some good news. In 1950, a little less than 30% of all novels that were considered to be best-selling were written by women. In 2015, that number was nearly 48%, a little bit more than 48%. So that's impressive.
Yeah.
So I think that's good.
Those are interesting stats,
I'm encouraged for my daughters and other women who may want to be authors and think about the possibility of one day being a best-selling author. But now let me go to another list. This is the list of Fortune 500 CEOs. So 2018, of the 500 companies that are on this list,
yes,
24 were females.
Surprised it's that high.
Yeah, 24 million. And it dropped from 2017 to 2018.
Wow. So less than 5% if my math is right.
Yeah, correct. That's correct. So where I'm going with this, Charlene, is that as a woman who has had remarkable success in her career, for the other women that are listening, and right now, just the women, you're talking to them, what advice can you give to them that you learned on your journey?
I think the biggest one is to push for the promotions before you think you're ready. I and so many other women have what I call imposter syndrome. You would think, looking at my credentials and everything, it's like, you have imposter syndrome? I'm like, yes, totally. I'm like, should I be calling out there? Well, who would ever want to come and read my book or meet with me? I don't want to bother them. I'm just no, there's no personal. You just do not feel powerful for all these different reasons. And there's a lot of data that says women will not apply for a promotion until they're 100% sure that they're ready for it. Men will do it when they're at 60% of that capability.
Wow.
And here's the reason why I think that's so important, is that as you look at the entry of people into the workforce, at entry level, you have parity. You have people pretty much representative of 50-50 men and women. You look at the population in terms of ethnicity and background, pretty much parity in terms of reflecting the local population. As you look into the first level of management, you start seeing things really, and we call it the equity, the executive parity. You would imagine that if it's 50-50 men and women, the next level of managers would be 50-50 women. No.
But you'd be wrong.
65-35. It's already in that very first level.
Yep.
And that very first level, we're already behind. And if you do this with intersectionality of women and men, and you also throw in race, ethnicity, women of color are white women are actually at parity. So they get promoted through fairly good parts of the ranks all the way up to the executive levels, pretty much at parity. Men of color at 80%, women of color at 50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and then white men are 1.4, so 140% of their representation. So this is why I think more than anything else, especially if you are a leader, one of the things to do is to realize that if you're an only, if you are not a majority, if you are not one, if there are not three of a particular type of group of people in the room, they will feel like an only. And the onlys, like the only women, the only person of color, the only young person, increasingly for me, the only old person in the room, it gets harder and harder to raise your hand, to raise your voice. Because there's so much more pressure. You feel already at risk because you don't necessarily feel like you belong. So all the diversity and inclusion, we tend to focus on the numbers. And I think the number one thing we have to be doing as organizations and as leaders is to focus on the inclusion part, on the belonging part. Because when people feel like they belong, they will rise up. They will ask for that promotion before they're ready. They will take the risk. And we need more people, and especially people who are underrepresented at these different levels of promotion, to step up better and faster and sooner, because we need to fill the ranks.
Great. Thank you so much for providing that to our audience and my girls. LT, anything you want to add before we get to
I do. I want to
what's popping?
I just want to add the one question to the last point that Charlene made, that she was talking about helping people feel belong. Charlene, you're running an organization. Do you have anything that you specifically do in your company and or with the companies that you're consulting with in that phase?
Yes, I think in particular, when I really look for women, again, I'm starting this network of disruptors, and I ask people like, hey, please recommend people. And one person goes, I've got tons of people. Send me a list, and I go, and I send it back, and I'm like, so all guys. You need to find me women. I need people, at least 50% of the people applying to be women. And so I go to women's events, I go to women networking places, and I'm actively recruiting women. Because when you have candidates and you give this opportunity to them, you will find parity, but you have to go find them. And if you're just waiting for your network, well, guess what? Most networks are biased and advantageous to men. Because men just have more networks. So if you rely only on networks to do this, you're going to get a lot more men. So you actively have to go find the women. And so when I'm running organizations, I'm very attuned to the fact that women may not be speaking up as much. They may not be thinking that they should be looking for a job. I actively encourage people to go look for jobs, even though they're perfectly happy at my organization, because I want them to be absolutely 100% sure that they want to be here, not that they're there because by default. So there's just a lot of things that I like to make sure that we're doing that. And at Altimeter, we definitely track. We're not very big, but we definitely track, the candidates. We have some diversity in terms of the types of candidates we were reaching, not only gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic, but also education. I liked interviewing people with no college degrees. Why not? People with military background.
Why not?
People who are doing, mid-career shifts and changes.
Oh, that's great.
Work-at-home moms.
It's
because I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that you have to fit a certain role, work 40 hours a week, be in the office. If you can contribute, we'll make that work.
That's smart.
I get great talent, great people who are just killing it.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Dee.
No, I was going to go to what's popping for you, Charlene?
I have been really focused. I have the opportunity to go and be asked to speak at a lot of women's events. And what I love is the energy when you walk into a place that has almost all women in it. There are these workspaces, kind of like WeWork, but they're for women. It's called The Wing. You walk in there, and there's just like this energy that's in there now. And I run towards those environments. I love being around that, being around my sisters. I feel like there's a part of me that can come out and be expressive about it that in other places just never comes out. So
very cool.
What's popping for me right now is I'm seeking out as many opportunities to meet and work with and be with women. This is I feel like I glow when I'm around.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Charlene, we're going to take it to the next, to our show close, man. I can't believe we're already there, Dee.
We are here.
So, Charlene, at the end of our show, we like to posit learnings that DC and I have both taken, and you're welcome to do the same. So,
from the conversation with you.
Yes, exactly, which has been very rich, and we appreciate your time. Thank you. So there's so many things, Charlene, but I'm going to go back to one of the last things you said. I'm going to give it just two, although I have more. Help people feel belong.
Yeah.
Help people feel like they're part of something. And I think
Larry,
we've all been in organizations, I'm going to say, where you felt like you belonged, and then you've been in organizations where you go, oh, man, this just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
And invariably, you can only do so much in those situations, and it's always more natural when the environment that you're going into, that you're the new person, comes out and reaches out to you to make you feel part of it.
Yeah.
So everyone out there, please, no matter what if you're a school teacher, if you're whatever marketing organization, you're in a small agency, you're in BBDO, whatever that may be, you're at Coca-Cola, you're at Pepsi, make somebody feel like they belong when they first join. And that's a huge thing.
Yes.
It sounds trite and small.
It matters.
But it matters. And the other thing I'm going to posit that we didn't even get a chance to talk about, that I want to add in to Charlene's book, is that be customer obsessed, and customer obsessed in looking forward. Charlene uses the example of Wayne Gretzky never was worried about where the puck was, but where the puck was going.
Yeah.
That's what Gretzky was known for. And so when we're thinking about, we're such a huge believer from our marketing standpoint of really research and making sure that we have research that we're really connected to the customer and consumer and B2C. So you really have that mindset is big. Those are mine.
Two big ones, LT. All right, Charlene, for our conversation, I've gotten three things. The first one goes back to when you talked about your early career, and you said this: the problem on the surface isn't the real problem. So what I offer here is understand the difference between what people say and what they mean. And I'm going to give a tool that may be useful to some listening, and it's this: use 6 whys. When someone says something to you, ask why. That's 1. And roll it down to 6. Because by the time you get to 3, you start getting to what the real why is. Yeah. And it would not have revealed itself in 1 or 2. So that's first.
Love it, T.
Thank you. The second is this. During the question where we asked you your biggest F-up, you graciously shared and transparently shared how you took your eye off the ball at your company. You had cash coming in. You thought you had more cash coming in. You look up, after doing things in your book, there's no cash, and you got to lay people off. So I say this, is that when you're starting at a company, any company, do the following. Quickly find out, how does that company make money? I don't care if you're in marketing. I don't care if you're an engineer and you're a product manager. Find out how they make money and find out how they spend money. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is you said that when you talk with people who say something about your book, you ask them this question: what was your takeaway? That is a phenomenal question.
Sure.
And I will say this, ladies and gents, boys and girls, as you evolve in your careers, be less impressed by someone's answers and more impressed by someone's questions.
Yeah. Here.
Yeah, that's what I've gotten from this conversation with you, Charlene. And have you gotten anything from this conversation with us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you guys pushed me on my F-up, I take, sort of fat, pack kind of answers. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to go out of my comfort zone, talk about this time when I really screwed up. And, it's one of those things where I have been somewhat comfortable talking about it, not that comfortable, and this really helped me just feel more comfortable talking about that.
Well, good. Yeah, we don't let the pat answers fly around these parts.
Yeah, but hopefully it was safe too.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. You made me feel safe and belonging to do that.
All right, Charlene, that's it. We love the conversation, and thank you so much for joining us. This has been a ball. So, audience out there, thank you so much for listening to Brands, Beats, and Bytes, recorded here on the farm at Stanford University Studios in Stanford, California, and a production of KZSU Stanford 90.1 FM radio and worldwide at kzsu.org. Today, the recording engineer is the one and only and very fabulous Charlotte M. Thornton.
Charlotte.
And our chief engineer is Mark Lawrence. The executive producers are Jeff Shirley, Daryl D.C. Cobbin, myself, Larry Taman, Joseph Anderson, and the pod father himself, Tom Dioro. If you are listening to us via podcast, please rate and review us. And if you do like the show, please subscribe and share. We hope you enjoyed our show, and we look forward to next time when we hope to have more insightful and enlightening talk about marketing with another great business leader as our guest.
If you wish to contact us, our email is brandsbeatsbytes@kzsu.stanford.edu. Again, that is brands, B-R-A-N-D-S, beats, B-E-A-T-S, bytes, B-Y as in yellow, T-E-S, at kzsu.stanford.edu. And for your consideration, always encourage people to please stay in touch. Now, here's how you can stay in touch with Charlene Li. You can just email her at charlene@charleneli.com. That's CHARLENELI.com.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Awesome.
And hit her up. Hit her up, people.
Yes, yes.
She'll respond.
Yes, she will. She wants the input, right, Charlene?
Absolutely. I want to hear how people are doing on their journey.
There you
That's
go.
how I learn.
Terrific.
That's how I do better research and more writing. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Charlene. You were awesome. Appreciate it.